So, welcome everyone around the world. And we are here with a very dear friend, Robert Coxon, who, as you know, is a beautiful musician. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, your mic is muted.
Your mic.
Thank you for inviting me.
And,
Yeah.
It's really exciting to have you here.
Well, it's exciting for me to be here too. It's
yeah, we're really looking forward to you being with us in Greece and the incredible energetics that you bring. And basically, what we'd like to do today is for you to share with us your story and how this whole evolved for you and how you connected with us, and wherever the words go.
beautiful. Yeah, it's I find it amazing how my life unfolded and how the universe has helped me so
Mm.
much. From being a very young child, one of my grandmothers had a piano, and I used to love playing that. She was teaching me pieces when I was 1.5 years old. And when I was 9, she did something that I really felt was a sacrifice for her. She told me that I could have her piano if I took official piano lessons.
Wow.
And this was amazing. Actually, she played the piano, but her family was so poor that she was able to have one piano lesson. And she didn't even have a piano at first. She took pieces of paper and drew out a keyboard.
Wow.
And she used to pretend she was practicing.
Wow.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I really felt that was a gift from her when she offered me the piano, and I said yes right away. It might have happened sooner, but I don't think my parents had the money before then to give me lessons. But this is when the official piano lessons started, and I was, that kind of the classical pieces, learning all the classical pieces. But I had another grandmother who actually lived in New York City, and we were living in Montreal, which is, directly 6-7 hours north of New York City. In New York City, she was studying with many of the great metaphysical masters of the time. I'm talking in the 50s and the 60s. And she would come up to Montreal on vacation and start teaching me things. She was telling me stories of miracles and magic when I was a young child, and how I can actually create that myself. So I had both the grandmothers there. And this went on for years and years, where I ended up, our family started going to Unity, which is a sort of church, metaphysical center, when I was 11 years old. And I continued the piano lessons, and I went to university, studied composition at university, and studied after that. And my career went on and on. And at one point, I could hardly play because I had excruciating back pain.
Wow.
And yeah, this was terrible. That was my bread and butter, performing on stage. And I tried all sorts of things. My doctor sent me for physiotherapy, electroshock therapy, and everything possible. And so finally, I just turned within and asked the universe, I need help. The next day, I woke up and opened up the newspaper, and there was a big ad for the Silva method of personal mind control. And they were giving a free evening. So my wife and I, then we said, why don't we go to this? And I went to that, and I knew right away it was for me. And the next week, they were giving a course from for 7 days, every evening, and then full day Saturday and Sunday. And during this class, um, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, by Wednesday, the pain was getting excruciatingly bad. It was getting
Wow.
worse, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I'll explain that after. But then Thursday, I come in there, there's no pain. It's all gone, completely gone. And I realized something. They were teaching us to relax and teaching us to meditate, although they didn't call it that. But they were using music to help people to get into that state of consciousness and if both physical and mental relaxation. And when I finished the course, I thought, I'm a composer. This would be easy for me to write this stuff. So I actually quit playing, performing totally. I was tired of playing feelings and all those pieces that the people wanted to hear in nightclubs. And I sat down and wrote Crystal Silence.
Oh,
Not,
that's amazing.
not even, not thinking of the money at all. Like not thinking, oh, I can make some money on this. I had no idea where it was going to go, but my aim was to write music that would help people. And at that point, it was help people to relax. And I bought a synthesizer, and I had a whole bunch of my friends that had taken the Silva course come over, and with this new synthesizer, I made them sit there and I played every single sound. There was probably like 144 sounds in it. Play every single sound and tell me, does this help you to relax? Or is that one? So I fine-tuned things, and I did some research on what speed the music would be. And then I came up with Crystal Silence. And one of my friends who was in this group, he was a professional composer, and he had some equipment in his studio that we could record. So he offered to do this for me, to help me. And
Mm.
we put out Crystal Silence, and I didn't know what was going to happen with it. I went to my first store with this cassette to try to sell it. I honestly did not know what wholesale and retail meant. And when the store said, well, we'll give you 60%, we're going to take 40%. And I thought, what? He's taking 40%? I wrote this, because I didn't understand anything about that. But one of the big New Age bookstores got a hold of it, and it got on to, he sent it to this radio program that they had on every night of relaxation music. And normally they would play, like different pieces from various people. They played the whole album, which
Wow.
was never seen before, never heard of. And from there, I got a distributor across Canada, and people were going into stores. I remember getting a email from a store in Vancouver where we don't know what's happening here, but people are running in here buying 10 copies at a time to give out to all their friends. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my music career. And of course, later on, I ended up being the music director at Unity.
Mm.
I wasn't into the church thing, but I was delivering cassettes to Unity because they were selling them. And one day when I delivered them, the secretary said, Robert, we have this new minister here. He's amazing. You ought to come and hear this guy. And I thought, I said, well, I'm not into the church thing. He says, well, come Wednesday evening. They just have classes where it's not so churchy. I came that Wednesday evening. The place was packed with people. They were sitting in the stairs. They were sitting on the floor, everywhere. And he starts playing Crystal Silence 2, and he does this half-hour channeled meditation. So as I was leaving, and the minister shakes your hand when you go out the door, I said, I wrote that. We became best friends. He convinced me to be the music director. And while I was there, he was doing these channelings. Not, I guess, not the legal thing for being a unity minister, but he was beyond that. And I was channeling the music. And every time, whenever there was an amazing piece that came through, after I got home from church, I actually remembered the whole piece and was able
Wow.
to go on the computer and do a rough recording of it. And this is how the Silent Path came about. And of course, the Silent Path was a major, or is a major hit for me. It was #1 in France for 10 years. But I'd say 80-90% of that album came from me going to Unity and channeling that music. Because when I brought it home, then what I did was orchestrate it after and put it on the album.
Mm.
So that happened. And I continued with other things, because something else that came out of this Silva thing was meeting some people that were teaching you how to channel, to do, the Edgar Casey stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
And my wife and I took a course, and then she ended up being channeling the 12 Atlanteans. And so we had this other business going besides my music, where people would come for consultations. They come for a channeling. So when I started working with Lee Carroll and Cryon, which I did for 23 years maybe, it wasn't something new to me, like, oh, this is weird stuff, what am I supposed to do? I knew what to do there, because I'd been around channeling so much, and I actually have trained people to channel. And of course, doing the music at Unity trained me to just channel music while other the voice channeling was coming through.
Mm.
So I was prepared, and interestingly, all that prepared me to meet you guys.
Yeah, because we met you through Cryon in
It was
Bulgaria. Yeah.
in Bulgaria. You were sort of guest presenters at that event, and I remember that the moment I met you, and I did the music for the channeling, but then you and I went and talked a bit, and actually Alcazar came through and said a few things, and that was very, very moving for me. That was, like, where's this going, And we've sort of been doing things together ever since. Another thing that walked into my life was sitting in my favorite Chinese restaurant in Montreal, and the waiter comes over and Ming says to me, just hit my stomach.
Yes.
And I hit his stomach. It was like hitting a cement wall, I said, how'd you do that? He says, oh, you're doing Qigong. and I said, I want to do that. And so I said, where can I study? He said, well, there's a master here in town, and I'll ask him. But he got back to me and said, well, the master, he's not taking on any more students. He's an older guy. And so I realized, well, maybe that isn't the master for me. So I'm sitting in another Chinese restaurant with my lawyer having a meeting, and we were talking about Qigong. And I said, we're in a Chinese restaurant. Maybe one of the waitresses or waiters knows someone. So we asked the waitress, and she ran off into the kitchen. She comes back with a piece of paper with a phone number on it. And I phoned the number, and the girl answered, spoke English, and said that, yes, her mother was teaching it. And so I went to my first class and found out that her mother is a 17th generation master.
Wow.
Doesn't speak English, doesn't speak French, only speaks Chinese. And I decided to study with her.
Huh.
But you know the interesting thing is sometimes she had translation, but it got to the point where I could actually just know what she's saying. You know, my another part of me was translating it for me,
Yeah.
so that worked. But you know, my grandmother talked to me about magic and miracles and that, and but this woman, this 17th generation master, said that through doing qigong, her grandfather lived to 152.
Oh
Whoa.
my gosh.
Yeah, and then she added that, well, the grandmother only lived to 130. And I asked her, did she get punished because she smoked one day or something?
Hmm.
So that's pretty amazing. And as I do research, I realize that can be a normal thing.
Hmm.
And it so happens that the type of qigong that I've been studying is the one that's scientifically proven to be the most powerful one out there.
Hmm.
I won't get into a whole explanation of it, but it is powerful. And the translation of the type of qigong it is, Jianying qigong, it means it's wisdom qigong. So it's working as much on the physical body as on the mind. And what I'm studying now with the master in China is the highest level of that kind of qigong, and it's called Mengjie Gong Fu, where you're not doing a lot of movements, you're doing a lot of movements of the consciousness out into space, to the universe, to the quantum field, and
Hmm.
then into the body, and that the relationship of bringing that energy into the body, and at the same time you send your energy out there and to Mother Earth to get rid of all the baggage.
Hmm.
So it's another way other than going to the psychologist every week for, um, and I'm reading an amazing book right now about, basing your life on your future, not on your past, and that's a problem with, going to the psychologist and focusing on getting rid of the past, which so much of us do, our hurts and wounds and what's making us the victim, but maybe focusing on the future. Or with the Qigong, we actually don't work on each problem, we just release it from the body.
Hmm. That's
Um,
beautiful.
and as I mentioned earlier, my grandmother told me all sorts of weird stories. When I was 8 years old, I knew about Roswell and the flying saucers. um, so then I took the Silva course, and I didn't just take that one level, I took every level. And I took the top level, the healing course with Jose Silva. And that was amazing. You're learning how to not just heal yourself, but heal others, and at a distance where you can just have their name and say, okay, I check my mind into this level and I focus on them, and then I know everything about them that I
Wow.
need to know.
Uh-huh.
Only the things you need to know, and then to do the work on them. And I remember one time, this was before I started studying Qigong even, where I was learning, you learn in the Silva method how to do hands-on healing. And one of my friends asked me to stop by her place on my way to Toronto because her granddaughter had this gigantic tumor or cyst there on the ovary. And could I do something, because tomorrow, the next day, she was going in for surgery. And I said, I'll stop by. And I just scanned my hands in front of her. And this was really weird, And I wasn't used to that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, my right hand felt like it caught a golf ball. And then I looked, and there's nothing there. Um, then she went the next day for the operation, and they did a scanning first, and they couldn't find anything. So she obviously didn't have the operation.
Wow.
Wow.
Um, And with my music, as I said before, my first intent was to help people to relax, realizing that I needed the music as much as them, or maybe more. It's like we always teach others what we need to learn ourselves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started realizing that the music was doing a lot more than just relaxing the people, and I was getting all sorts of testimonials coming through. And it got even more powerful when I started performing on stage with Cryon, doing events all over the world. And I remember doing an event in Philadelphia, and I had just finished a little mini concert playing the piece called Coming Home, that one, which is actually really quite famous on YouTube. So I finished this piece, and this man jumps up in the air and says, "I've been healed." And so I figured I better ask him. You know, he's interrupted the concert. I might as well find out what happened. and he said that for 10, 15 years he had tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears, you know, all sorts of sound in the ears. And it went away. It's not there anymore. So during the break, when I'm signing autographs, and him and his wife come over, they buy a whole bunch of CDs, and his wife says, "I have to tell you this. His hearing is so important for him because he's legally blind."
Wow.
So 6 months later, Lee Carroll goes back and does a little at-home event, you know, where there's maybe 30, 40 people. And this guy is there with his wife again and tells him, no, the sound didn't come back. So it was a permanent thing. And that was really cool. But then a year after that, Lee went back again for another small one. And the man was there. And this time, he wasn't blind anymore.
What?
Mm.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So these things are, wow, the power of sound. And the power of energy. Sound is energy, but also I've seen with the Qigong things, just, you know, things that blow people over, just the energy of it. And when you combine that with consciousness, you have three things that are so powerful that actually are the tools that we're going to be using at the workshop in Kos to integrate the 5 aspects of becoming the new human, so that it just happens. It helps you to transform. You know, the aspects of love, peace, happiness, gratitude, which is a really big thing, and in some ways bigger than love, and the aspect of oneness, where we all realize we're together. And I've had I give a course every 2 weeks now called 100 Smiles. It's focused on Qigong, but not just Qigong. We do a lot of music. We do the consciousness things. But someone asked me, well, this oneness thing, but I want to be myself. You know, that's a good question. You know, how can we all be one if we want to be ourselves? And I explain it this way, in a very musical way, that if you're an oboe player in the orchestra, you're the oboe player, but you're still part of that full orchestra. The orchestra is one. You're part of the one, but you're still the individual as the oboe player. And the thing that you have to do with that, and that's part of becoming the new human, you have to create balance within yourself. And then you have to create a balance within your section. The oboe plays in the woodwind section. So it has to be in harmony with the rest of that section. And then that section has to be in harmony with every other section in the orchestra, the brass, the strings, the percussion. And that as a unit becomes the one, the whole. And how does this whole become, how do some orchestras become famous and fantastic, like the Berlin Philharmonic or the London Symphony? Why not every orchestra if everyone is together in it? And it has to do with that working from a higher level of consciousness, of tapping into your genius, which is some people call the higher self. There's many words for it. What I call it your sacred self, because then, higher self, that's kind of deceiving because it's not necessarily up there, it's in here. So your sacred self. So that's how I explain the oneness that we want to feel.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So I know that you've been working not just with people, but you've been working with growing plants. Would you like to say something about those experiments that have been happening?
Oh yeah, some really weird stuff.
Yeah.
We set up an experiment in Mexico in a greenhouse the size of 10 football fields. It's actually quite big. And they grow bell peppers there. The green and red bell peppers, the yellow ones too. And we set up 96 speakers in that place and playing the music for the plants during the night when everyone's gone, or even during the day. And their productivity went up almost 25% just by that. But the experiment that I really, really loved that they did there, they took one of the giant bags of seeds, with thousands of seeds in it. They spread it all over the floor. And they took one of my albums called Mental Clarity. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, but they played that for a day and a half to the seeds. Now, why did they do that? Because normally when you plant seeds, they don't all germinate, and some that do germinate, when they grow, but they never produce fruit. They die before that. So there's what I'd call a percentage of death in the bag. And they played it for just the sound for a day and a half to the seeds. And then they planted the seeds and calculated the death rate. They cut the death rate by 53%.
Wow.
Now, what happens there? Is what I feel is that the music was able to repair the DNA, bring the DNA back to what it should be, the oneness with the perfection of the universe. And we've had other experiments done with, the piece called Theresa Ney, which is a piece that I wrote with Lily for the Voices of the Elohim. And actually, when we were in Slovenia a few years ago,
Right.
we actually recorded the audience singing it. So we had our maybe 20 voices on the recording from my studio of my daughter, many times, and her friends, and to create that little choir. But I did a mix of the audience and them singing. So we had like 550 people singing it. And after I had finished writing the music for the One Field movie, one of the scientists on there, John Stewart Reed, he contacted me and he wanted to do an experiment on human blood, on red blood cells. And he wanted me to send him some music. So I figured, well, I should send him Coming Home because so many people been healed with listening to that. And I'll also send him Theresa Ney just as another piece, not thinking anything about it. and he chose that piece. And he had human blood that was quite old, so a lot of the cells were dead or practically dead. And he measured how many cells there were per milliliter of blood. And there went 210,000 cells alive, red blood cells alive. Then he played the music in a Faraday cage, which is sort of like a, well, it's to keep out interference. It's like a microwave, and speakers in it. And he played it for a loop of 20 minutes to the sample of blood. Then he remeasured the how many red blood cells were alive, and there were not 210,000 anymore. There were 710,000 cells.
Wow.
In other words, the music brought life back into many, many, many of those cells. So
It's phenomenal. It really is.
yeah, it really is. It's mind blowing for me, and almost it's very hard for me on the pieces that are really powerful. Very hard for me to admit that or to say, "Wow, I wrote that," because I know I didn't write it by myself. It was a co-creation, and that's the thing that so many people don't understand. If you actually connect with the universe, and you do that by becoming the new human, that's the way we're going. To co-create, what we call co-create, then you actually end up doing 10% of the work, and the universe does 90%. Isn't that cool? Instead of trying to do 120% by yourself. That's what I've found. Because once I connect, and that's what I do when I'm playing at the Stargate events. Of course, the energy is so powerful there. It's easy to slip into that state, you see, for me. But then I let the music come through. As I said in an interview, I was interviewed in that movie, The One Field, and the director was asking me about, channeled music and the soul masterpieces that I do for people. And I said, well, my fingers, I don't know how I do it, but my fingers always go to the right notes.
Mm.
Which sounded kind of egotistical, but until I added, I said, they always go to the right notes if I let them. Because we always have a doubt about things. And this is where we start to see the difference between believing you can do something and knowing you can do something. There is a subtle difference in there. And when you can get to the knowing, then the flow happens. And when you can get to that level of consciousness where you're connected to the field, which music does, which Qigong does, which consciousness work does, the right way of meditating, then you get into this amazing place where you've hooked into the synchronicity of the universe. And then things just happen for you, just at the right time. So many people think, oh, they're so lucky. How come they get all these chances in life and this and that, And the people that are saying that, they want to step out of their reality of being the victim into also becoming the master. When you become the master, it's because you're hooked into the universe. And
exactly,
yeah, and your sacred self is part of the universe. So hook into that, and that's the thing that I want to do in that workshop is to help people, and I'm going to have all sorts of music there. I've always wanted to give a workshop where a lot of it is orchestrated, so that people are sitting watching and being part of the movie of their life. Yeah.
Wow. So everybody's getting really excited about this potential that's held in your work that you allow to come through. So I'm wondering if you could give us a few minutes taste of this experience.
Sure. I'll do I'll do a couple little things here. Um, let's try. I'm going to try just before I play anything. Just put your hands together and rub them a bit, just to get the sensitivity going there, and move them out, and move them back in. And as you move them out, breathe out, and then breathe in. As you breathe out, breathe in. This is just to get a feeling of the chi energy, or the energy of the universe. Call it what you want, prana, life force. And as you breathe out, imagine your consciousness, your thoughts going way out into the universe. And as you breathe in, bring your consciousness, breathe it back in, right into your body, right down inside your belly button. And then breathe out. Now, we don't have a lot of time here to do this, but what we're going to do in the workshop, we're going to start really feeling that you can send your consciousness out and then bring it back in. And some of you are starting to feel something between your hands right now because you're building up this ball of energy. And what happens is the chi energy, or the life force energy, it follows your consciousness. So when your consciousness goes out there, you can imagine you're sending out all your baggage. And as you breathe in, you're breathing in all that universal energy into your body, building up your strength, building up your immune system, building up your wisdom. Yeah. So just keep breathing and breathe with the music and realize how sacred you are. Just breathe gently. Now breathe out. Breathe in. let yourself go. Just let yourself go. Deeper and deeper. And imagine that the air you're breathing in is the energy of love. How are you feeling?
You totally made me cry.
I don't even really want to talk.
Okay.
It's just very, very beautiful. Of course, it always is, Robert.
Thank you. I
That's
I played on the end there the little.
I noticed. Yeah.
For those that do not know, that is the Stargate theme, actually. And I remember the day sitting at my keyboard when Brigitte and I were on Zoom or something like Zoom, and he wanted me to score a little movie that he had put together. And I thought there should be a theme. And as he's talking, the theme just, it's like Alcazar said, "Well, here, Robert, here's the theme," you know. And that sneaks in very often into the channelings at appropriate times, um, to almost to sort of introduce Alcazar.
Mm.
Yeah. And the thing I love about um, working with you and working with Alcazar is it's not just, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's not only, that's what I should say. It's not only very meditative, because sometimes we can get into, really, into real heavy things, and for me that's wow, I have freedom here. I can, and what really happens for me is I'm doing an instant movie score.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And the frustrating thing is that I only have two hands,
Mm.
But I know sometimes I've listened to some of the tracks after, obviously, and um, I say that's impossible with two hands.
Wow.
It sounds like I'm using four hands,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's beautiful for me, and I think what the music does, during the events, it helps people go on that journey, because for a 4-day event or a 6-day or whatever event, they're on a journey,
Yeah.
and the music, it's like they're in their movie, and that's what I want the music to assist them, to be the catalyst for, with Alcazar's something, or um, I don't know, Mary comes in, or Anna, grandmother of Jesus, comes in, and uh, I I try to capture. My job is to capture the essence of Anna there, or capture the essence of the star beings that come in,
Mm.
so that you can feel it on all levels as the experience, as the participant in the event.
Well, what we've noticed many times is that as we're channeling Alcazar and
Mm-hmm.
he changes the energy, he doesn't say anything, but he changes the energy that's coming in, and instantly or simultaneously,
Simultaneously.
actually, the music changes. It's like it comes through you and it comes through us at the same moment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
And that's
exactly.
incredible when we're doing it live. But also, what's totally amazing is that very often when we're doing workshops, we're using recordings of your music and we just intuitively pick one.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that the same thing happens, even though it's a recording. It's like
Yeah,
Alcazar is working with the recording, and the energy shifts with the music too. I mean, it's
And when
yeah.
that happens, it's like jaw dropping for us. It's
yeah,
just like,
Well, I'll tell you a short story here, that's was jaw dropping for me. Lily was down giving workshop in somewhere. I think it was probably Mexico. If not, it was South America, and she has all the music of mine that she uses. It's on her iPhone, and then she has, connected to the sound system, and she's doing an activation, but she puts it in random, and so it
yeah.
always comes out the right way. Yeah, as you were saying, the right music happens at the right time. But then at one time she said, "That's Robert's music, but I've never heard this before. That's not something I put on here." And at that exact moment, we found out later as we talked, um, that I was in my studio channeling a piece of music, and it came out on her iPhone in somewhere in South America when she was giving her workshop.
Wow.
Yeah, it just
Yeah,
anything's
that's
possible.
I think that's how you know you're in love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Well, there's been lots of comments in the chat, people sharing their experiences with your music and saying how wonderful it is. And I just wonder if they have any questions or comments to direct at Robert, if you are up for answering some of their questions in
Sure.
a few moments.
I love that. I love that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert's going to be playing for the 6 days,
Hmm.
um, doing live music with the Stargate, and also he's going to be doing his whole presentation concert and going much deeper into what he's been sharing this morning.
Yeah, helping us to take the 5 aspects to becoming the new human into actually applying them to us and creating that transformation. That's so important, you know. That helps you to be a leader and not a follower, you know. And imagine when you get a bunch of leaders together. Wow. Talk about power. In other words, it's helping you to step into your shoes as the master. And that is different than 20 years ago because the whole energy is changing now. The world is changing and it needs your help.
Hmm.
So it's this is, if you're listening to this, if you're running around following following the Stargate, if you're doing these events, you're here for a reason. It's not just, oh, it's fun, it's entertaining. Yeah, it is. It's fun and it's entertaining, but it's so much more on so many levels, that even levels that us, and I'm talking about Prageet and Julianne and I, even levels that we do not understand yet, because there's not words to, we understand it, but there's not words to express what this is. It's beyond words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exciting.
So somebody's asking you, what piece of music helped a blind man to see and hear again?
It was a piece called, if I remember correctly, it was the piece called Coming Home. And that is on the Prelude to Infinity album. It's the second piece on that album.
Mm.
And you can check it out on my website there, robertcoxon.com, COXON.com. Yeah, and I've seen other things with that particular piece too. When I was in Japan, a woman that I was playing the piece, and you know, I'm supposed to be just focusing on the whole audience, but I kept focusing on this one woman, and I had no idea what was going on. I finished the concert, and my assistant is walking me back, you know, the aisle there of the theater, and my guide said to me, "Tell the woman that it worked and everything's perfect." Whatever that means. So my translator, Ron, says to her in Japanese, you know, explains the whole thing. We go to the back of the hall, and I'm talking to a few people there. And the woman comes up and looks at me. She puts her arms around me and hugs me and starts crying. And then she realized what she did, because in Japan, you don't have body contact in public, and you don't show emotion in public. She got so embarrassed, and she ran off. And I couldn't ask her what happened. But the next day, the organizer contacted me, and he said, this woman, she knew, this was at a crying event. She knew nothing of crying, knew nothing about any of this stuff. But she saw a poster, and something told her she had to be there. And she had this condition. She had on her leg this big black spot that the doctors didn't know what it was and they couldn't get rid of it for, she had it for 10 years at least, and they didn't know what it was. She went home that night and got undressed, had a shower, and the black spot wasn't there anymore.
Mm.
Completely. So just those weird little things that happen when you're listening. And what we call the Coxon effect, we had to figure out what are we going to call this stuff that's going on, so we call it the Coxon effect. So coming home, powerful.
Mm.
But what the piece I mentioned for the seeds, which is mental clarity, that is, when you listen to that, it sounds like one long note, like an om for, forever and ever. There's no melody. It's 3 notes that I was given by the universe. And the sequel to that, which is called Quantum Reality, which takes you even further. Those are the 2 most powerful albums, but it's nice to have beautiful melodies too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely my favorite pieces.
Yeah.
CDs, yeah. I mean, it's delightful and it puts you in such a relaxed, connected space.
Yeah, and that's that's the first thing to connecting is to relax.
Absolutely.
But not just relaxing the body, relaxing the mind.
Yeah.
And the mental clarity, we did research on that with Olympic doctors that trained the Olympic team in Canada. And we won more gold medals than anyone at the Winter Olympics.
Wow.
Using mental clarity. Mental clarity was found to, when you close your eyes to meditate and you think, oh, did I turn the stove off? Where's the dog? What are the kids doing? You just can't clear your mind. And what this does, it clears your mind completely. It gets rid of the chatter so you can actually think of nothing. Sounds kind of weird, eh? But the interesting thing about thinking of nothing, then you can listen to the universe. You can listen to your guidance. You can connect with all that wisdom there, the infinite wisdom. And it also, for studying, people love it because the left and right hemispheres, it balances them. And you need both when you're working in this physical world. So
somebody's asking, do you have music to help a baby sleep?
Wow. I encounter my daughter's friends who are now adults and have children, and they're saying, "Oh, you're the one that wrote Crystal Silence. My mother played that when I was a child, when I was a baby, for years and years." And I've met hundreds of them, that say that. Any of those albums, I'd say Crystal Silence is great. Silent Path is amazing for that too. It helps the baby not just to fall asleep, but feel secure. And this is the thing that I discovered with a lot of autistic people, how my music can help them. They love it because my interpretation of autistic people, they're not totally in this world. They're out there and they're operating in this world. They don't want to come in here because heaven is safer for them. But when they listen to my music, the music creates the heaven atmosphere in the 3D world. And so they are able to participate because they feel good. So with babies and children, it creates the space that they need to feel secure as they grow up. Yeah. So,
cool. That's another interesting question here. Savi is asking, do you have music for alcoholism? I'm assuming she means to help.
You mean, yeah. Do I have a bunch of drinking songs?
Yeah.
96 bottles of beer. um, well, you know, alcoholism is what's coming through. It's an avoidance of connecting with your sacred self,
Yeah.
and just like any addiction is a substitution for why you came here. um, and the music definitely helps you to connect to who you really are. And when we say that, connect to who you really are, that sounds kind of corny, eh? But Pragit will explain that to you.
In Greece, all right.
It's the part of you that is so much more than your physical body, because we are so much more. We're infinite beings with infinite power, and we've come into this world to learn certain lessons, but we're like 1% of the real thing. So what the music is doing is helping you to connect to your other 99%. And then, wow, what are the limits? There are none, you know?
Yeah.
So any of the music will help that. And a very interesting thing with this music, when I decided to be a composer, I was at McGill University studying composition, how to write music. And when I was studying there, they were teaching us how to write modern atonal music. And that means, I'll play you the type of thing that they would want us to write. You know, it'd be something like a, you know, like, God, and I'm sitting there in class thinking, how am I ever going to make any money writing this? SHI, you know. And so I decided then I want to be a master of writing beautiful melodies. And that's what I worked on. And so my albums, the people that don't know anything about spirituality, don't want to change, don't want to do anything, but they listen to music. And because the beautiful melodies attract them. But then there's everything else that's behind the notes. Because I tell the people it's not the notes that count. It's what's behind the notes. It's that the pure intent. My pure intent, but the pure intent that is I let come through, that is beyond the physical Robert's idea of what pure intent should be. So they're listening to the music, but all this other stuff is affecting them on a very positive level, and they'll suddenly they're in a bookstore and they see a book on meditation or a book on just how to relax. Or, you know, things start to happen because there's a part of them that opens up and gives them permission to go beyond who they think they are, who they've been defining themselves as. And so that will work for alcoholism. That will work for absolutely anything. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of similar comments and questions here. So Adrienne is saying that she plays a silent path for her class of preschoolers when they nap.
Yeah.
And they sleep soundly. And there's another one here from Suzanne is asking, is there a recommendation for healing animals that stay overnight and being treated in a veterinarian hospital?
Okay. You know, we at one point last year we changed cleaning ladies, and the next one turned into be a man, so I was a cleaning man, and but he had this really nervous energy, like unbelievably nervous, and my cats, where can I go? You know, let me outside, you know. And so what we did, we took mental clarity and played it extremely softly so you almost don't hear it, but it still has the effect. The cats calmed down, and it was very healing for him too. Um, so animals, they will love that. If you have to play it really really softly, like almost don't hear it, and you can play that whole night, the whole day, whatever. It works. It does magic. Also, you can play the albums too. Play them softly. The animals love them. Um, my cats, not the setup I have here, but other setups I've had, they've wanted to sit on the speakers and just be there. The plants do something. When I wrote Crystal Silence 1, we had a ledge, a window ledge, filled. It was probably 10 feet long, 3 meters long, maybe more. And it was filled with plants, and they're facing the sunlight. And when I started working on that piece, the plants would turn around and face the speakers.
Whoa.
And then my wife would come in the next morning and she said, something's wrong here. So she turned the plants around back to the light. and then after like half an hour, the plants are all looking at my speakers again. And we had an asparagus plant, like a fern, and it was this big. And it after 1 month, it was this big.
Whoa.
It's just amazing. So the music affects the animals, it affects the plants, it affects all of us. Yeah. Maybe even the rocks. I don't know, but
I'm sure because it's pulling in the quantum field
oh yeah.
and the harmony of where we actually come from.
I can, in the workshop, I might tell a few stories about, how I channel.
Yeah.
Not just the music, but the information that comes through, And one of my big things is trees. But later I got into rocks. Which sounds kind of weird. How to hug a rock, And it's amazing information that comes through, like the trees saying to me, well, we live very long because at the end of the before winter, we release all the baggage, all the old leaves. And then we prepare for rebirth in the spring. And then I walk further in the forest and there's this rock the size of our house. And I put my head, right on the rock and my hands, and the rock suddenly says to me, we live much longer than anyone else. And I say, why? And they said, because all we're doing is just being. The idea of just being instead of trying to do, just be.
Yeah.
And that's the thing in the workshop of love, be that love, not look for that love, not find that love, just be that love or be that peace, be that, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a comment for you.
I am learning to breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. I did this too with Robert earlier. I had a kind of blockage in my throat after lung cancer. Now the blockage is gone. Thank you. See you so much. Yeah, beautiful. You know what will also help you, and for the throat, to even totally erase every old energy from there is when you're breathing in. Imagine the color of a light blue color from the sky. Imagine breathing that in, because that's the communication color, for that area of the body, and you can actually. For anyone that wants to relax, do the breathing, but imagine you're breathing in blue and sending it to every cell of your body. So it's just relaxing completely. Yeah.
Beautiful. So we're coming towards the end of this process, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we just want to just say to people that, again, Robert's going to be with us for these 6 days, sharing his music and having a special event there for us.
Yeah, so we'll be together in Greece, and Robert's going to be playing music for the entire 6-day event, the main event with the Stargate. Yeah, I'm so
No, that's
excited.
beautiful.
You're
I'm
going to be there.
excited. I'm
Yeah,
really excited. Yeah.
yeah. So there are 2 different live streams happening from Greece. As many of you know already, there's the main event, and there's also all of the featured speakers. And so you can either get the all access pass to all of the featured speakers, or you can also sign up just for Robert's evening. And I'm going to scroll through and find your evening, Robert. There you are. So, the power of sound, energy, and consciousness. Do you want to say a little bit about the blend that you're going to be providing for people during that experience?
Sure. Um, First of all, I want them to show them that they can transform. You know, some of the people are thinking, yeah, but everyone else can do it, but but me. It's the whole thing is going from you either have you have two big choices in life, either be the victim or the master. We're all floating somewhere in between, because we all have little issues. So we're just opening up to becoming the master. And that master is to be an expression of love, of peace, of happiness, joy, happiness, gratitude, and putting them all together into the oneness of who we all are. So, and that's not just a community thing, that's a whole consciousness thing. That's a big thing that I was studying with Qigong in the last couple of years, about putting all those things together, actually putting 4 of them together, and I added the oneness because that's so important. And then oneness is sort of the culmination. When you get all those 4 together, you're automatically in the oneness of all that is. And what we'll be using the sound, we'll be using the energy. We're not going to have a whole class on Qigong, that's for sure, but we don't have time. It's a progressive thing. If the Qigong interests you, check out the 100 Smiles on my website. But we're going to be putting them with the use of consciousness to integrate all those things into our being on a physical, mental, spiritual level. And that's what transforms you. That's what changes your life. That's what keeps you smiling every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great.
And you mentioned that so briefly, Robert, but you actually just started teaching your form of Qigong as a monthly thing online.
Oh yeah, before that I've been doing Qigong for 20 something years. And I only taught it to my friends sometimes, if I felt this is going to help you. So I was teaching them Qigong, and then what happened was, good friend of mine, Alexander Menshikov, he's, some of you know him. He's a young guy, he's 33. He lives in St. Petersburg, Russia, but he travels the world and he's super well known. He has a big following. He knows how to keep that following because he actually used to be the marketing guy for the Russian equivalent of Facebook. So he knows how to do those things on the internet, but he's what I call a spiritual psychologist, and he gives workshops all over the place. And he met Lee Carroll and I in Russia maybe 11, 12 years ago. And since then, he's been using my music and only my music exclusively because he's found it so powerful in what he's doing. And we tried to get together. I was supposed to go on tour with him in Russia and Latvia and Lithuania. and then COVID hit. That was the year I canceled nine countries. um, and then a year and a half ago, we ended up connecting again. And I said, why don't we do some stuff online? So we did some things online, and then we did some stuff in Mexico. And then he insisted this year that I come to Bali, and he says, not just music, Robert. You do so much more. He said, how about the music and the qigong and the consciousness? And I had to really think about that because I'd never taught qigong, to a whole group of people. But I'm, thinking half the people teaching qigong out there have studied it for 5-10 years. I've done it over 20, so why not? And I've studied with the great masters. So I ended up doing that. I did a 2-week workshop, gave a 2-week workshop in Bali, beautiful Bali, for last April, May. And after I got back from that, it was for Russian people, mainly Russian people. And they kept texting and saying, well, what are we going to do? We want to study some more, with you. So we put together a program called 100 Smiles. And we do that every 2 weeks. And it's like it costs next to nothing. It's on a subscription, not a prescription. It's for those that don't want to have a prescription. They end up getting a subscription. And you cure everything that way.
So, Robert, I just really want to thank you for sharing this with us today. And maybe you could just play us out with a few minutes of some of your spectacular sounds.
You know what I would love to go out with, if this is possible?
Yeah.
Why don't I play the piece that Theresa Ney, which is the one that changes everyone's blood thing? Because one of the things I'm going to have these people doing also in Greece is singing, because that makes things so personal. Your whole body vibrates with that. So I figure that if this music can bring alive all those red blood cells, I'm sure it can do many other things, like transforming you on many levels. So you'll be able to sing along with it, okay? Without your microphones.
Got it.
Well, no, it's not that we don't sing well, but if you have
the loudest, I understand.
500 people singing at the same time, because there's a delay, and someone's singing one word and the other person sings it like later, it's just like total, yeah. Okay, so let's do this, okay, as we go. And for me, thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Greece.
It's such an honor to co-create with the field, with your music, with the 1,000 people who are going to be in Greece. It's going to be so.
It's going to be amazing for me. I'm so excited. It's not even 7 weeks away, something like that.
Yeah.
It's very close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go.
Right.